Hello, everyone, and welcome to Voice of the Box. Today, I'm sitting outside of Seattle, and joining me today is Shannon Drayer. Shannon, you know what? We got a lot to cover. You've got a great background. Would you first just start us off by explaining what it is you do? I know you're in the radio business, but maybe you could explain it better than anyone in terms of what you do and how long you've been doing it.
Well, right now, I am the traveling reporter for the flagship radio station of the Seattle Mariners. And it's a very unique position because I am employed by the radio station, which is 710 ESPN Seattle, but I travel with the team, and I'm associated very closely with the team, and I'm a part of their broadcast. I'm part of the pregame, I'm part of the postgame, and in addition to that I do reporting for my station. I do an off-season Mariners show. So basically I am 365 days a year, 24/7 Seattle Mariners.
So this is strictly baseball. Have you ever, varied? Does the station ever put you on any other assignment? If not, we're going to dive right into the baseball piece. But I just wanted to ask if there was any variance to that at all.
They can, because my background was reporting. I didn't start out baseball exclusive. So I actually was a beat reporter for the Seahawks for 3 years before I did that. I've covered some other sports as well.
She does do baseball, folks. I happen to be driving in my car coming back, traveling, and you were just in Orlando for the baseball winter meeting. So I know that baseball is pretty much, like you said, what you do 365. I imagine there's a story there, but I won't assume how you got your break and how you got your start into the sports broadcast, into the radio business. Is there a story there that you could possibly summarize for us?
There is. When I was growing up, I loved radio. I knew that I wanted to be in radio. I listened to radio. I lived in the Midwest. I did the whole radio under the blankets at night when I was sent to bed and listened to Cubs games and Cardinals games, Twins games, and on weekends you could even pick up Vin Scully just because of the way that the radio signals travel across the plane. And I love radio. I love sports as well, but when it was time to go to college, I looked around and women weren't doing what I was doing. And the only ones who were doing it were ex-beauty queens and ex-basketball players, and I didn't quite fit either of those, so I decided to go in a different direction. And I came out to Seattle to go to the University of Washington, and I studied psychology and drama. I was part of the marching band, which kept me close to sports, which was good, and went off on my way to try and find a career. And I acted for a while and decided I didn't want to starve, so I came back to Seattle and took a job at Starbucks while I tried to figure out what I wanted to do.
Eating is good.
Eating is always good, and the parents are always a little bit happier about that. I think the worst words I ever said to my father were, "I want to be an actress." I think that was the absolute worst.
So you're sitting there at Starbucks, and I don't want to read your story, but there must have been, and you're probably going to get to it, I'm sorry. I interrupted you by the whole eating is good concept, but maybe you could finish off, I'm sure that finish off your story for you. I'm sorry for interrupting you.
I found that what I did all day was I made coffee and I talked sports with the customers. And I kept up on all of my sports. I read the newspapers. This was before a lot of ESPN.com and things like that. So it was still newspaper then, and people would come in and we'd talk mainly about the Mariners, a lot about the Huskies. And one day a customer came in and said that the local sports radio station was having a contest. It was called the Sports Hack Wannabe Contest, and the premise was, if you think you can do our job, send us a tape. And he said, you need to do that. And this person actually helped me make a tape, and we sent it in, and I didn't think anything of it. And 6 months later, I got a call from the program director and said, hey, we like your tape. We're pulling 6 of you in on the air for an audition, for it. And yes, went through the day, and at the end of the day, they offered me a job, very part-time. I did updates for John Clayton at KJR, 4 hours a week, and that was my start, and that was my in, and that was my opportunity.
That is a really good story, I must say. I mean, I hear stories all the time, but that's, I don't want to put words in your mouth because that's not fair, but that's, in a way, having courage and also being prepared for when the opportunity knocks. I mean, I think, is that fair to assume that you obviously you had the courage to do it, you had someone help you, and you went for it?
I didn't realize it at the time. I just kept thinking that this was blind, dumb luck. And somebody, years later told me that I did a lot of things in my life that prepared me for it. Staying in the marching band when I went to college, kept me around sports, got me down on a football field, and got me into areas that I wouldn't get into anyway, and I was comfortable when I did. Pursuing psychology and drama. Psychology taught me how to write, drama taught me how to speak. And just keeping that interest. So I think that there were little steps that I was taking that I didn't even know it that helped prepare me when the time came. I was lucky that opportunity ever even came up, and that was the first. I think anybody's heard of. I've heard that ESPN has done the show and things like that, but they thought they kind of did it on a lark, and they told me afterwards they thought nothing would come of it, and 4 years later I was a full-time employee of theirs.
Thanks for sharing. That's actually a really good story. Let's just get this next question kind of out of the way, and it's a gut reaction because every industry, regardless of what you're in, has got some inherent challenges. And the spirit of the question is to give my viewers, an understanding of some of the typical challenges that you may face, whether that's daily, weekly, quarterly, whatever the case might be. It doesn't have to be a long list, but how would you short list what some of the challenges are? And of course, we're going to flip that around to the next question.
Well, I think the biggest challenges in what I do, the most important thing that I do is develop relationships. And I think that when you're in this business, I think that there are a lot of people in this business who have huge egos. And you have to have a lot of confidence in yourself to do this, otherwise you're not going to survive.
Right.
But a lot of times when you do that, you forget the other person is the other, my job is to interview people, a host's job is to present people. So many things that we do in these sports are not about us.
Right.
And that's probably the biggest thing that you always have to do, just kind of a self-check, and you have to make sure that it's about the other person, and you have to learn how to deal with people that maybe you wouldn't deal with normally, or maybe somebody that you would like to dismiss and that person's not pleasant to be around, or you have to find ways to forge relationships. There's no such thing, I think, as a bad interview. I think there are bad interviewers. I think that every subject, you've got to be able to find a way to do it. And I think that is the biggest challenge in my job and what I do. Right,
and we could go off on a tangent on that question alone. We're not going to do that, but just to your point, I think, just even recently, it's such a fine line. Let's use the quarterback situation, the post-game Monday Night Football down in Arizona, when I don't know if that interviewer was pushing and asking the same question multiple times. And I imagine you've been in that typical situation. And again, we're not going to go there, but I think to your point, it's knowing how to forge through those types of scenarios. Let's flip that around to more of the positive as well. We like to focus on that too here.
Positive is good.
There's obviously something that keeps you, getting up excited about what you do every day. How would you short list, what keeps you excited in coming back to work every day?
Well, I love baseball, and I realize that what I do, a lot of people would love to do and do not have the opportunity to get as close to the game as I do. When I was a little girl, I loved the sport. My dad played it a little bit. I lived overseas for 5 years, and that's kind of, we would play softball once a week, and it just kind of put me in touch with, okay, this is kind of what it means to be an American. It was kind of a taste of home. And then I came back, and that's how I learned how to become a fan. I was a Cub fan. I love the game, and I can't ever play it as a woman. I'm not going to be able to manage it. What's the closest I can get to that game? It's what I do. I'm on the field for the last inning or two of the game. I'm in a camera well on field level, 20 feet away from the ball as it crosses the plate or it connects with the bat. And that is the absolute positive of it and what I love. And then meeting the people that I meet in the game. It's an incredible family. And to be a small part of it is it's an absolute privilege. Yeah,
you're right. Privilege, I think access, and I don't want to, again, not to put words in your mouth, but people that just don't have access like you do to Major League Baseball, it would be very eye-opening, is my guess, to have the access that you do.
It is. On the professional level it is, and there's fun too. I've had future Hall of Fame baseball players take me out to dinner with their families.
Wow.
And just to get to see them away from that, things like that. They're little things. It's nothing that happens every day, but, once a year you have an experience with a person and you just have to kind of do a check and go, wow. And then you go, you know what, that's okay. I don't have to be super professional here. It's okay to have that moment and to enjoy that and to see that side. So, that side's just absolutely incredible as well.
Outside of the academic piece, we're not here to, demean that piece of it. It's certainly important. What other skill sets, like maybe the intangible side, would you say, if you had to put a list together of 2 or 3 or more, pieces or technical aptitudes that you think, are helpful that would bring someone success, again, in addition to the academic piece?
Well, we'll start with the academic piece. I don't think you necessarily have to go to broadcasting school. I didn't. I think you have to be well-rounded, and I think probably one of the most important things in this day and age is that you have to be technical savvy. You've got to be able to blog, tweet, and Facebook and understand the importance of that, and part of that is writing. I think writing is the most invaluable skill that you can have right now, because even though a lot of the newspapers are going under right now they're looking for people that can do everything. It's no longer, you have your radio people, you have your writers, you have your TV people. They're all intermixing. I do some writing, I do some TV, the newspaper people, those who still have jobs, it's all about the blog. How do you, there's a little bit of self-marketing.
Sure.
That is very important in that right now too. So I think that social media is huge, writing is huge. What I said before, handling yourself. You have to have a certain maturity to work in this environment. You see so many things, and that's kind of when I knew I'd grown up. There are things that you see, and it's not your place to comment on it. And especially if you're a fan, you might want to go, knock an athlete upside the head and say, "What are you thinking? Come on, you're better than this, and you should be running this play or that play." You can't do that, and I think that that's a big thing. So, your social skills, your social media skills, and your writing, I think, are probably the most invaluable things that you can have.
Great insight. You mentioned something earlier. I want to just kind of pick back up on it because I think it flows naturally into an area that I want to get into, and that is, it was actually under the question of what are some of the challenges. And you said, listen, you need to forge through and build relationships. That's so big. Relationship building, networking, whatever term you want to use. I'll just use networking because I know how critical it is for, the college student and the grad student or the young professional. Are there any stories of how you've networked yourself that have, led you to success that you might want to share, that you're willing to share with others? Again, just on the networking piece alone. I mean, I can, again, just as you're thinking through that, the internet has, opened up so many doors where someone, for me, I'll speak for myself, didn't have that, coming out of college. There was no internet. But again, spirit of the question is, what kind of tips or guidance would you give on networking alone to someone that's looking to break into the industry?
I don't think I'm particularly good at it. I'm not good at self-promoting. I'm very low-key about things. But that said, I was still the first person. I've been at 3 radio stations, and the second station I was at, I was the first one to have a daily blog and understand the importance of that. And that followed me to my job where I'm at right now. And you can never look at it as extra work, which is what initially a lot of people said, well, am I going to get paid extra for doing all this and writing this every day? And the answer, of course, is no. And you can't look at it that way. You've got to look at the importance of it. So I think the best way that you can network is if you have that blog, if you get comments on those blogs, answer them. If people email you, answer them. I think correspondence is huge, and that's how you make a lot of your contacts. If there's an opportunity to meet anybody, even if it's not something that might be completely up your alley, they're there for a reason, so they're a part of it. Go meet them, talk to them, ask them what their story is, and be interested in what they're doing. Make that connection. Anytime you have an opportunity to meet anybody from a team in a PR office, absolutely, meet them, have your business cards. You have to get over that in the early stages. It can be tough to put yourself out there, it really can. But you have to know what your goal is, and you have to know that I don't think anybody's ever going to hold that against you for doing that. You've got to get a foot in the door, and you've got to put yourself out there. And you can do it electronically, you can do it in person, but never look around and say, you know what, that person's not going to be able to do anything for me, because you don't know that.
Sure.